The Mishnah begins, Moshe Kibul Torah Sinai. So speaking about the transmission, of Torah. Moshe received the Torah at Sinai. So the obvious question is, it should say, Moshe Kibul Torah me Hashem, or me HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moshe received Torah from God. What do you mean? He received it from Sinai. Sinai is the location. So why does it say Sinai and not from Hashem? So the first thing that came to mind is the Rambam, which we always mention in Hilchos Yisodei Torah. The Rambam says, what is the basis for the authenticity of the Torah, that the Torah is the word of Hashem? Because at Sinai, every Jew prophesied in the awake state. And as a result of that, Einenu ro v'lo acher, v'lo zor. We saw with our own eyes. It was something which was hearsay. We heard with our own ears, and it wasn't told to us by someone else. Everything was firsthand. We had heard how Hashem openly spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu, saying, Moshe, tell them such and such. So in this public event, through prophecy, we witnessed how Moshe was chosen by Hashem to be his spokesman. So as a result of that, it was established from then going forward that the word of Moshe is the word of Hashem. Moshe is God's spokesman. That is the basis of authenticity of Torah. Otherwise, the Rambam says, one could say, if it's based on miracles, maybe Moshe was a greater sorcerer than all the Egyptians, and he misled everyone. Therefore, we had to witness ourselves how Hashem openly chose Moshe to be his spokesman. That's the Rambam. Therefore, it has to say, Moshe Kibul Torah mi Sinai. He received Torah from Sinai because Sinai was the location where we witnessed this reality, how Hashem had handpicked Moshe to be a spokesman. So the Vilna Gaon says, and the other commentators, not that they allude to what I'm saying with the Rambam, if we want to identify the location, say Moshe Kibul Torah bis Sinai. What's mi Sinai? Mi Sinai, from Sinai. Okay? So the Vilna Gaon says we find it in the portion of Zosa Brocha, before Moshe Rabbeinu gives the Brocha to Klal Yisrael, to the Shvatim, to the tribes, he says, Hashem mi Sinai bo. V'zorch me'ar poron, me'ar seir. Hashem had come from Sinai, and he speaks about he had come from Har Seir, and Rashi cites the Gemara that before he offered us the Torah, he offered the Torah to the nations of the world. And after he offered nations of the world, they all turned it down, he offered it to us. So because the Pasuk says, Mi Sinai, that's why Rabbi Yehuda Nossi, when he offered the Mishnah, he chose the term Mi Sinai. As it says in Zosa Brocha, Mi Sinai. Hashem Mi Sinai. He came from Sinai to give us the Torah. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda Nossi, he used the term Mi Sinai rather than Bis Sinai. So I explained it this way. What does this mean? What exactly is Moshe Rabbeinu saying to the Klal Yisrael? Mi Sinai. Until Kriyas Yamsuf, we saw miracles. We saw, and the miracles displayed supernatural acts, which seem to indicate that Hashem is the omnipotent one. He's the creator. He's able to do these things which are contrary to nature. But as much as you see things, but you really understand who Hashem is. We speak about Hashem ourselves. He's the creator, he's infinite, whatever you want to say. But do we really have an understanding of who he is? We have no understanding of who he is. To internalize that reality. The Rav Chaim Volozhiner, he asks a question. We find that the greatest prophet who ever lived was Moshe Rabbeinu. The Torah attests to the fact, Hashem attests, he's ponim el ponim. His prophecy was face to face. It was in a wake state, not in a dream state. But it says, L'kom b'Yisrael k'Moshe. There was no one as great as Moshe Rabbeinu. But the Chazal tell us, but the inference is, among Jews, he was the greatest prophet. But among nations, there was a prophet who was his equivalent. Who was that? That was Bilam HaRosha. He had his prophecy had that acuity that Moshe Rabbeinu had. I'm using specifically the word acuity. So Rechaim Volozhin asks the question: if that is the case, Bilam, he's a person who committed bestiality. He's a man who had no scruples. He's a man who was pompous, arrogant, not to understand even to what degree. But if he was as great as Moshe Rabbeinu, how's it possible? So he goes and he explains it with an allegory. An eagle is a bird that is able to soar heights which no other bird can fly as high. And an eagle, when it flies and when it comes, it swoops down. The rays of the sun are refracted off the surface of the earth, and due to that, with its eyes, it's able to see hundreds of miles. An eagle. No bird could see as far as an eagle. That's the term eagle eye. A bat is blind. A bat has no eyes. But yet, its sensitivity to light is such a level of sensitivity that when it senses light, it goes to the deepest recesses of a cave, the darkest location, where there's not a ray of light entering into the location. So the sensitivity of the bat to light is one of a kind. But does the bat have any inkling what light is? Bat doesn't see. The eagle sees. The bat does not see. But in terms of sensitivity, its sensitivity could be the equivalent of the eagle with light. Moshe Rabbeinu saw God, understood God, internalized Hashem's reality. As a result of that, he was the most humble person who ever lived. He was the purest person, so on and so forth. Bilam had no idea who God was. But he had a sensitivity. He sensed he is something. What is he? Doesn't know what it is. But he knows he has a degree of control. It's a sense. But what he is, he doesn't know. As a result of that, he could behave the way he behaves. It's not contradictory to his sense because he doesn't know. So he said like this. We say in the Yoshir, when we witnessed the splitting of the sea and the sea closing on the Egyptians, it says Zekeh Levan Veyu. What's Zekeh Levan Veyu? So Rashi cites Chazal that even the Shivcha Layam, the maidservant on the sea, she was able to point with her finger and say, "This is my God, I will extol him." God's presence was so palpable. What she had seen, Yecheskel Novi did not witness. And what does it say in the in Ozi Yoshir? Nivelu Alufi Edom, Yosefu Road. The princes of Edom, they were trembled, and they were overwhelmed with fear when they heard how the Egyptian armies were destroyed. They knew God did it, but did they witness what the Jews witnessed? They had no idea. God is able to destroy anyone, but to witness who Hashem is, we witness that. That's Zekeh Levaveyu. As a result of what? But what did we see? What did the Shivcha Liyam see? So we say every night. I always mention this in Birchus Kriyas the night. Malchuscha Rovanecha B'Keyom L'Fnei Moshe. What we saw was Malchuscha. Hashem showed us His majesty. It's not only He destroyed the Egyptians. Zekeh L'Aveyu means He showed us His majesty. When He showed us His majesty, we said Zekeh L'Aveyu. Hashem Yimloch L'Olam Ved. Hashem should reign. His reign should be forever. So what we saw, they didn't see. They saw the mightiest armies being destroyed by a power. But what is that power? They had no idea what that power was. That's the difference between the Jews and the nations of the world. When Hashem offered us the Torah, why did we say Nasa v'Nishma? Because when you understand Hashem is Melech, when you see his majesty and He offers you something, you don't ask questions. What is it all about? You embrace it. That's that came about there. The nations of the world, they understood God is omnipotent. He's the most powerful. But when you offer him the Torah, he says, we're not interested. What's it all about? What's it all about? If you understand this majesty or you witness it, then you don't ask the question, what's it all about? But when you don't witness his majesty, although you know he's able to destroy the mightiest armies, you say, by the way, what's it all about? And you say, well, if he's making us the offer, we choose not to partake of it. We turn it down. So I explained it this way. See, when we left Egypt, we understood exactly why we were leaving Egypt. We were going from Egypt, not just to be a free people, but we, as it says in Chazal, until then we were Avdei Paro, we became Avdei Hashem. We were Paro's subjects. There was a transition. We became Hashem subjects. And the objective was to go to Sinai and receive his Torah. But until the splitting of the sea, we didn't know what that meant. Torah, but who is God? 10 plagues, the clouds of glory, the mun. But to understand, but we didn't witness who he is. He never showed us who he was. He showed us what he does, but who he is, that he never showed us. From after Kriyas Yamsuf, he showed us who he is. As a result of that, it was a different waiting. It was a different level of anticipation and yearning from that moment going forward to go to Sinai. We're going to be offered the Torah, which is being offered by the king. We can't wait. It's a whole different level of anticipation and yearning. So what happens now? Hashem offers the Torah to the nations of the world. And we know that's possible. Here you have the ultimate, and somebody else may grab it. If they take it, maybe they'll be the only ones, or maybe we'll be partners. But it's not going to be only ours. As a result of that, there was a little degree of worry. Hashem Misinai go. That's to reveal the level of yearning and anticipation we had. Misinai. He had come after giving it to the nations of the world. He came to offer it to us. So not only does it tell us the quality of understanding that we witnessed Moshe being God's spokesman, the location, but it was Misinai, as the Vilna Gaon says, that's the pasuk in Zos HaBrocha. After offering it to the nations of the world, he gave it to us. But what does that say about us? That reveals our yearning and anticipation, to what degree we were waiting to take it, where we're concerned that minimally will be a partnership, or it may not be offered to us if they take it. That's why it says Moshe Kibul Torah Misinai. Daber al kol adas bnei Yisrael. Hashem says to Moshe, speak to the complete congregation of Israel. Not daber el adas Yisrael, kol adas Yisrael. Every Jew that's there, speak to all of them. We find the concept of, there's a mitzvah of hakel, that every 8th year of the sabbatical year, beginning of the 8th year, the king would read the Torah, hakel. He assembled, all the Jews assembled on the Temple Mount, men, women, and children, to hear the reading of Chumash Devorah, Mishnah Torah. That's hakel. This was hakel. This mitzvah was communicated to all the Jews. They were all present when he communicated. Daber el kol adas bnei Yisrael. Rashi, Lamed shenem parshu b'hakel. This indicates that this parsha was said with the assemblage of all the Jews. Neisherov gufei Torah tuluim bo, because the majority of all the fundamentals of Torah are dependent on this concept, on this mitzvah which is being communicated at this moment. What is being communicated? V'amarta aleim kadoshim to you. You should be holy. Ki kodesh ani Hashem Elokeichem. Why should you be holy? Because I am holy. Let's take a look at Rashi. Kadoshim to you is a famous Ramban, which we'll discuss here. Have a prushim in arayos and in avero. You should separate yourselves from forbidden sexual relationships and from sin. Wherever you find one makes fences to keep your distance from illicit sexual relations, you find kedusha. you find, and what is Kedusha? We mentioned many times. What is the basis for Kedusha? Hashem descended on the mountain, Har Sinai, the mountain was holy. Hashem's presence ascended, it was an ordinary piece of rock. The burning bush. Remove your shoes. The earth is holy. Why? Because the Shekhinah was there, because the divine presence. Wherever the divine presence is there, is associated with, it's called Kedusha. Why are we a Goy Kodosh? Why are we a holy people? Because God said at Sinai, when he took us as his people, I will always be attached to you, inextricably connected to you. So because Hashem's presence is always connected to us, that's the basis for the Kedusha, the holiness of the Jewish people. So if you want that holiness, you want Hashem to have relevance to you, you must be separated from this kind of behavior. Get them in an erva. They have to create a fence, distance themselves from illicit sexual relations. And then you have Kedusha. Where do we find such a thing? Isha zonu b'chalolo. A Kohen is not permitted to marry certain women, which an ordinary Jew is permitted to marry. Jewish women. Then it says, Ani Hashem mekadishchem. I am Hashem who sanctifies you. Lo yichal zaro, the Kohen. You should not desecrate your seed, your progeny. Ani Hashem mekadsho. Kedoshim tiyu. Isha zonu chalolo. Kedoshim yiyu. Isha Zona, Ani Hashem Kadishchem, Alma Grusha Krusha, Almona Grusha, by the coin. So we find, when you find one, we find that when Bilam advised Balak to destroy the Jewish people, what did he say to him? Elokeim Shalelu Sonizima. The God of the Jews, he despises, he will not tolerate licentious behavior. And that was the whole story with the Milos Moav and the Milos Midjan with the Balpor. But his Bilam's first salva was Elokeim shel Elu Sonezimo. He will not tolerate it. The moment he attaches himself, then he's throwing us to the dogs, literally, to the wolves. You know, the pasuk refers to us with the Kivsa among Shivim Ze'evim, with the sheep, the scapegoat, among 70 wolves, the world of wolves. How could a sheep survive 70 wolves? We should be devoured and literally shredded, torn to pieces, but yet we survive. Why are we able to survive? And this, I always mention the Chazal. One of the emperors said to one of the Tanoim, you know, how is it possible that the Jewish people could survive among 70 wolves? It must be, the answer is we're not wolves. Because we'd be wolves, you wouldn't survive. So the Tana responded to the emperor, it's because we have a special shepherd. And the shepherd protects us. That's how we survive. It has nothing to do with you not being wolves. You're all wolves. But when is Hashem our shepherd and he takes care of us? To the degree that he protects us, despite it's against all odds, when we behave a certain way, because of his level of association, attachment to us, that's what protects us. That's the Kedusha aspect. But of course, if we actually dilute that, then we become vulnerable. Hashem promised us will never be annihilated, that there shouldn't be a remnant of Jewish people. But unfortunately, there's plenty what? Could you all one moment? I just want to take this call. So Rashi is learning why are you Kedoshim? Because whenever we're detached from arayos, from forbidden relationships, it has relevance to Kedusha. The Gemara tells us that at Sinai, Hashem offered the Torah to all the nations of the world, and they turned it down. But the Yalkut is another medrash, which is not different than the Gemara, that after Hashem had given the Torah to us, the nations of the world came with a complaint, and they said, why don't you offer us the Torah? And this is the beginning of Parshas Bamidbar. It says the Jews, when they established their pedigree, they brought their documents of pedigree. So Hashem says to the nations of the world, let me ask you a question. Every one of you, you're from illegitimate stock, adultery, incest. That's where you come from. My children are pure. They're pure pedigree. When the nations of the world heard this, they were like astounded. And the Medrash quotes the pasuk in Eishes Chayil, Kamu Boneh V'Ashur. The children rose and they extolled her. They extolled the Jewish people. Never heard of such a thing. How could you be? Because the only woman who actually was violated in Egypt was that one woman, the Egyptian who Moshe killed, because she was raped. But no other woman was what? The pedigree of the Jew was pure. And Hashem attested the fact. Hachanochi apalui yud kei, that every one of the Jews is a purebred, not from illegitimacy. But the world, when they heard that, they were like astounded. And they understood why we were qualified, they were not qualified. Again, so we see the same thing. Whenever you cross these lines, Hashem will not have to do with that. Therefore, we were qualified, they were not qualified. That goes in the direction, as Rashi explains, wherever you find Gedim and Erva, there's Kedusha. Kedusha is Hashem has relevance and a relationship and a connection to that location. Okay? The Ramban learns differently. Kedoshim Tiyu is a mitzvah saseh. You should be holy. What's holy mean? You should not be a menuvel b'shus Torah. You should not act. Menuvel means like an unsightly person within the context of Torah. What does it mean? He explains a person could live to be fully indulgent like an intellectual animal and yet not violate any one of the laws of the Torah. How's that? Okay. You should not be immovable. If a person goes and has a harem of women, wives, and he's able to indulge unceasingly with one, and it conforms with the laws of family purity, he's a glutton. Every type of food he eats conforms with the laws of dietary laws, with kashrus. And that's the way he lives his life. What is he doing? He's living within the conforms of the Torah, but he has no level to Kedusha. He's fully a physical, indulgent person in the material. Hashem says, if you want to have a relationship with me, as I am totally detached from material and physicality, you must establish that commonality between us. If the material is purely for the sake of the spiritual, that's called spiritual. But if the physical is for the sake of the material, to be partake of the material, for the material, that's animal, that's not called spiritual. You live as an animal, not as a spiritual being who has to maintain yourself. It's a means, it's no longer a means, it's an end. When the material becomes an end, then you're giving up your spiritual persona. But if it's a means to an end, then the material becomes the spiritual. So Kedoshim Tiyu, you should wean yourself from material as much as you can. And then we have this relationship, Yikodesh Ani Hashem Elokechem, because I am Kodesh. I am detached from the from the material. Therefore, for us to have that relationship, you must be detached. As I always say, compatibility is based on commonality. The greater the degree of commonality, the greater degree of compatibility there is. And this is why all Gufei Torah tluyim, all the fundamentals of Torah are dependent on what? On the mitzvah of Kedushim Tiyu. Because the greater degree of Kedushim which you have, the greater level of what relevance you have to Hashem to be able to. We find that Adam kiyomas ba'oel, ein Torah nikras el mishamei mitzatz malel. If you want to acquire Torah, first we know you have to have humility. That's why Torah is compared to water. As water flows to a low location, the Torah can only be contained or processed in the person who's died to shvela, who has extreme humility. You must forego the material amenities if you want to fully merit, and the Torah should be gifted to you. That's Adam Kiyomas Bo'el. The famous bench Tanchuma in Parshas Noach, we find the first paragraph of the Shema. We say, with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your material. In the second parsha, it only says, there's no mention of chomotchem in the second portion. Why? First parsha is written in the singular. Second, levavchem nafshchem. Doesn't say bodechem. Bodechem. Why? So the Medrash says, because we're speaking about the acquisition of Torah. For the acquisition of Torah, it's not only to show and display your love for Hashem in your heart and in your life. You have to forego all the physical amenities of life, the pleasures of life, for the sake of Torah. The second is speaking for the masses. It's not for the few individuals who are at that special level. Jews, they do it all their heart, they'll give their lives. But to forego the amenities for the sake of Torah, most people don't do that. You need your 3 square meals a day, you need your this and you need that, whatever it may be. It's not the full. The famous Gemara in Brochus, Shimi Yochai says, argument of Shimi Yochai and Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shimi Yochai says that if a person would plow in the plowing season and sow in the sowing season and reap in the reaping season and then harvest and then winnow, he says, Torah Te'olel. So when does it be time to study Torah? You're occupied in the material. So Rabbi Shmuel says to Rabbi Shimon, but look, read the second parsha of the Shema. V'asati deganecha. The rains will come in the time, and you bring in your harvest. And it says, "Vayim shor tishmol mitzvosai asher nochi mitzvah eschem hayom." So the Jews are observing the mitzvahs, and yet it says, what is the result of that? The rains will come in the time, and what? And you'll bring in your harvest. So we see, no, it's not like you're saying. That's what Shmuel says to Rabbi Shimon. Shimon says, no. They're not fully doing the will of God. What do you mean not doing the will of God? It says, you're doing my mitzvahs. But to what degree are you doing mitzvahs? It's not the ultimate level. To give it all away for Hashem, that you're not doing. Because automatically there has to be a compromise on the Torah itself. You're compromising the Torah. The first parsha is that very unique individual, which is rare to find. The second of the masses, you find L'vavchem nafshchem, Modechem you don't find. But it has to do, that's the degree of, we're talking about there's plenty of Kedusha. We're not talking about gluttons or people live as heathenists. We're not talking about heathenists. But to be able to achieve that ultimate level of Torah, you have to conform to what's stated in the first parsha, not the second. That's Eino Musa Mitzvah Shel Mokum. That is the ultimate level of Kedoshim to you. Menuvel b'shus Torah means you're really a hedonist. You live like a hedonist. Even like a hedonist, you're violating Kedusha, because that has no relevance to what Hashem is all about. But the degree of Kedusha, that will determine the level of relationship that you have with Hashem. What level of Torah will you achieve? And since we say Godel Atalmud Shatom Meidli Maser, great is the study of the Torah because it brings to the actualization. So to the degree that you're able to grasp and internalize the Torah, that will be to the degree that you'll be able to serve Hashem by actualizing the mitzvah. That will be the determining factor how you're actually going to fulfill that mitzvah. Oshim to you, why must you be kadosh? Ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokeichem. Now, what's the first thing the Torah now speaks about? Ish imo v'aviv tiro, eshep sosei tishmoru. You should revere your mother and father and observe the mitzvahs. This is essential. When we speak about after Kedusha, the first thing we introduce is revering your mother and father and the observance of Shabbos. To discuss this in the more, Rashi cites the Gemara, which is the Midrash also. And Rashi cites Chazal. When we speak in the Aseret Adiros, 10th commandments, we said, Kabed es ovicha v'esimecha. Honor your father and mother. When we speak about this is reverence. This is reverence. It's a different mitzvah. Revere your mother and father. The order is changed. When we speak of honoring, we speak honor your father and mother. Revere your mother and father. Why do we have that change in order? So take a look in Rashi. Skipping the first Rashi. Imo the oviv tiro, kan higdim ein of. Here, the mother is mentioned before the father. Because it's revealed and known before Hashem, the fun of, that a son reveres the father more than the mother. You know, you love your mother. But in terms of really respect means in terms of reverence, you value because the father is the breadwinner. The father you see has a greater understanding of the world. Therefore, automatically that brings about this sense of reverence. Ubekibud higdim of them. When it comes to honoring, that's how to treat. How do you treat your father and mother? Naturally, you treat your mother differently. And you treat your mother to better than your father in terms of because your feeling it's a warmer feeling, because the relationship is more of an emotional attachment to the mother than the father. Because she's always appeasing him with words, she's always praising him and always accommodating him. Therefore, naturally, the feeling to the mother is warmer than the father. Therefore, Torah says, despite that, you must honor your father no less than your mother. When it comes to reverence, although you may esteem your father more than your mother, but you have to show that same reverence to your mother no less than your father. That's why the Torah, each one has to present what is not natural. Even though it's not natural, it has to be dealt with identically at the same level. You have to exhibit it and display it at the same level. What's an indication of what's reverence? How does that manifest itself? One does not sit in your father's seat. One does not interrupt your father's conversation. As you don't interrupt your father's conversation, you don't interrupt your mother's conversation. You don't sit in her place, as you don't sit in your father's place. What is kibud? You help your mother on with her coat. You help her, you assist her in physically speaking. You provide food for her. even though the natural tendency to mother, you provide more easily for the mother than for the father. So what is there juxtapose? Somach Shmira Shabbos Lemora of Lomalach Api Shizarticho Amora of. The Torah is saying, although I commanded you, you must revere your father. That means you must value his word and his dictate. It's valuing. In Yomalo Chalil Sa Shabbos, if you told to violate the Shabbos, Al Tishmalo. You're not permitted to listen to him. As much as you revere him, as much as you value everything, what he's all about. Why? Ani Hashem Elokechem. Ato vavicha chayv bechvodi. Because your father is no less obligated to honor me as what? As you're obligated to honor your father. As a result of that, if your father tells you to not heed my word, you listen to me. Because your father is in violation of what he himself is obligated. Leficha lo tishmalo levatel es dvorai. Then Rashi cites Chazal, is El Mora, what is a display of reverence? Lo yeshim b'mkomo, lo yedabri b'mkomo. You should not sit in his place. You shouldn't speak in his place. Lo yistas dvorav, not contradict his words. Vezo kibud, machen or mashke. You feed, give him to drink. Malbish or maniel, assist him dressing, assist him putting on his shoes. Machlus umotzi, assist him to leave the home, to come back into the home. Okay, we're going to